Phase 6 is shaping up to be a pretty important transitional phase for the MCU, as it seems like we are now in the era of them having learned from their mistakes, cracking down on quality over quantity, and finally giving us what the saga has been missing, an Avengers movie, or maybe 3. But what if the correction was never needed? What if the saga was always well put together and well thought out, and what if Doctor Doom, as the big bad, was the plan all along? Well, that's something I covered in 2 previous videos, which I'd recommend you watch before this one if you haven't already, because it might be confusing if you don't. But now we've arrived at the final phase, and in this video, I'll be covering what this all leads up to: Avengers Doomsday. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and become a member in the Noble tier above for early access to videos, or the King tier for a special shout out. Thanks to these members for the extra support. Phase 5 ended in 2026, and as it did, Marvel revealed the name of the saga, the Incursion Saga. This leads into Phase 6, which will certainly include a lot of incursions. Phase 6 will span 4 years instead of 3, and serve as the conclusion of the saga. Setting the tone for the entire phase is the first project, What If Season 1, finally releasing years later between January and February 2026. At this point, the multiverse has been thoroughly explored, from little hints to the visual of the multiverse to dreamwalking to crossovers with other franchises, entire films set in alternate universes, and heroes traveling to those universes. With the multiverse already stretched to its limits, now is the moment for What If. This reimagined series leans fully into the anthology nature, with most episodes animated by different studios and given distinct visual identities. Several episodes retain their original stories but are recontextualized through style and tone. There's What If Captain Carter was the first Avenger, but she's not going to be appearing nearly as much as she did in the real world show. What if T'Challa became a Star-Lord? What if Earth lost its mightiest heroes? What if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? And then episode 5 does remain What If Zombies, but with a more serious tone, followed by episode 6, which is What If Zombies Part 2, depicting the rest of the Wakanda storyline featuring Black Panther, Spider-Man, and the Ant-Man head from Marvel's Zombies, since no standalone zombie series will exist. Episode 7 marks the return of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in What If the Amazing Spider-Man Traveled the Multiverse. Peter returns to his universe only to be intercepted by Spider UK, a member of the multiversal group known as the Captain Britain Corps, who recruits him to stop a multiversal threat known as the Gatekeeper, a spider being tied to the web of life and destiny. After defeating him, they encounter the Spider Society from the Spider-Verse films, directly connecting that currently ongoing trilogy to the MCU, and it could be argued that maybe they're a part of the Incursion Saga, but that's definitely very debatable. The series goes on with What If Iron Man was stuck in space, What If Ultron won, and What If the Watcher broke his oath. These final episodes do not unite the season's characters. Instead, the sole through-line protagonist is the Watcher. Ultron succeeds, nearly wiping out humanity, before a fractured group of heroes ultimately destroys him with a virus, leaving only Natasha Romanoff as the final survivor of humanity. Overcome with guilt, the Watcher finally intervenes, transporting Natasha to the universe where she was killed by Hank Pym in episode 3. This is because the real-world What If series devolved into not being an anthology when it really should have just stuck to that. And then also the Infinity Ultron plot is literally the biggest stakes plot in the MCU, rivaling that will come in Doomsday and Secret Wars, so I don't think that is a good idea either. The Uncanny X-Men releases in March, bringing back Matthew Vaughn, director of X-Men First Class, alongside writers from X-Men 97. This film draws heavily from select X-Men 97 storylines, much like Captain Marvel Binary did, meaning scratch what I said in part 1, X-Men 97 unfortunately will not exist in this world. Instead, the stories will be used for movies, maybe even in the MCU X-Men reboot down the line. But before that reboot, the Fox X-Men received one final film, 27 years after their debut, fully transitioning into the MCU. The team introduced in Captain Marvel Binary is joined by Gambit, Jean Grey, Wolverine, and Colossus, most of whom are from the Deadpool movies, and who were absent during the earlier events, for the most part. The Fox X-Men timeline remains confusing, but behind the scenes that explain that Days of Future Past branched off into a few different timelines. But then in only one of the timelines, the other 2 prequels occurred, in which Wolverine was not really given a large role. In the other 2, events similar to the original X-Men trilogy took place. And then in one timeline, Logan eventually occurred, giving Wolverine his definitive ending. And then there's the timeline that we follow, in which Wolverine did have a heroic death, but it was off-screen, in an event similar to the Death of Wolverine comic storyline. He was then replaced by the Wolverine of the Other Earth, from Deadpool and Wolverine. Following the creation of Genosha in Captain Marvel Binary, mutant human tensions remain high after Onslaught's destruction. During Genosha's Independence Day celebration, attended by members of the X-Men, Brotherhood of Mutants, and Hellfire Club, the event is suddenly interrupted by a devastating devastating purple blast. The attackers are revealed to be wild sentinels, unleashed to annihilate Genosha. Jean Grey is killed instantly, and despite the X-Men's efforts, Colossus also dies before Gambit destroys the Sentinel. The X-Men track the attack to Bolivar Trask, now elderly, only to discover that he is not responsible. The true culprit is Sebastian Gilberti, aka Bastion, a living Sentinel born from the altered timeline of Days of Future Past. In 1973, Wolverine's body was unknowingly infected with future Sentinel nanobots, which later transferred to Rose Gilberti, a Weapon X scientist, and eventually to her son, Sebastian. Seeking answers, Wolverine leads the team to Deadpool because he's with Cable. Cyclops learns that Cable is his son, who was born to Scott and Jean and in the past infected with a techno-organic virus, and they needed to send him to the future because of it. In the final battle, Cable links himself to the Sentinels, turning them against Bastion. Cable dies in the process, but this allows the X-Men to defeat Bastion. The X-Men, especially Cyclops, have sustained heavy losses, but move on for the betterment of mutant kind. Genosha lives on. But in an end credit scene taking place an unknown amount of time later, Scott Summers is approached by a cosmic being, referring to himself as the Beyonder. The X-Men will return in Avengers Doomsday. I don't know if you noticed this, but I intentionally made it so that placing Thunderbolts in the MCU in Phase 6 would be as seamless as possible, including giving these characters a few more appearances throughout. Specifically, Yelena had 3 or 4 appearances. Maybe that could mean that Thunderbolts would be more hyped and would do better, because it was a very good movie and will be imported to Avengers Doomsday, so I didn't really want to change much. However, I need to because of the changes that I did make before this. Released in May and made by the same writers and director, Thunderbolts Asterix will need to be a bit different in that US Agent, Yelena, and Ghost all already know each other, having served together as members of the US government's version of the Masters of Evil during the Secret Invasion. The opening scene from the movie deals with the Masters all being separately sent to the incinerator to be gotten rid of. In this version, that also includes Batroc the Leaper, and Taskmaster looks a lot better. However, both of them are killed. Taskmaster is killed by Ghost, and Batroc is killed by Walker. And then we meet Bob, and from there everything is exactly the same, even the end credit scene that teases the Fantastic Four in a scene from Avengers Doomsday. It just so happens that the Fantastic Four movie releasing between these two is the third, not the first. The new Avengers were formed not because the post-Endgame Avengers never assembled, because obviously they did, but since the Avengers officially disbanded while acting in secret. So officially there are no Avengers, and now there are. But of course, the new Avengers will return in Avengers Doomsday. As established in Part 1, with Doctor Doom positioned as the saga's ultimate villain, Marvel's first family, his arch-enemies, are given a full trilogy, concluding with the Fantastic Four Into the Negative Zone. Released in July and closing out Matt Shakman's trilogy with the same writers. The film is set 4 years after the first movie's ending, meaning the Fantastic Four have been active for 9 years, and Franklin Richards is now 4 years old. Following earlier events, the Illuminati remains stranded on Earth 828, with Reed Richards now one of their members. He theorizes that the Negative Zone, an alternate dimension capable of linking worlds, is preventing the Illuminati's return and blocking America Chavez's powers, as well as Doctor Strange's dreamwalking, due to Earth 828's proximity to it. Reed and Sue join the Illuminati on a journey into the Negative Zone to find them a way home. While America Chavez is powerless, so she stays behind, Johnny remains at the Baxter Building to monitor them while bonding with Franklin, and Ben Grimm deals with relationship turmoil that ends in a breakup. Meanwhile, Doctor Doom, now despised by the world, yet leading Latveria into prosperity, begins experiencing visions of countless futures, where in each future the Fantastic Four fail to stop the end of the world, until the final future where Doctor Doom succeeds. The visions point towards a greater force at play. In the Negative Zone, the heroes arrive on a planet known as Balur, ruled by King Blastar, where they immediately lose communication with Earth, leaving Johnny panicked and helpless. Blastar confirms Reed's theory. A being called Annihilus is blocking all non-technological interdimensional travel. Annihilus commands the Annihilation Wave, an army of giant insectoid creatures. He seeks immortality by siphoning cosmic energy. Blastar and the heroes agree to work together in order to destroy him. While staying at Blastar's castle, Sue begins receiving visions of a young girl asking for help. She secretly discovers the castle's dungeons, where a telepathic child named Luna is imprisoned alongside a group that the audience might recognize, the Inhumans, redesigned but portrayed by the same cast as the ABC series, although it's only a few of them. Strange and Black Panther recognize them as natives of their world. After one night, the heroes free the Inhumans and flee to the nearby planet Arthros, learning that the Inhumans were also exploring the Negative Zone before before being captured. However, upon arrival, the group is ambushed by Annihilus, who lives here, who reveals he orchestrated these events to lure Reed and Sue, capturing everyone who escaped from Balor and beginning to siphon their cosmic energy in order to extend his lifespan. While all this went down, we periodically also cut back to Earth, so these events are immediately followed up on by the end of the Earth events, which I'll go over now. In one of his visions, Doom sees Annihilus destroying the world, and so he involves himself in the current affairs of the Fantastic Four, arriving at the Baxter Building, taking control of the situation, and using a fusion of magic and technology to enhance America Chavez's powers, breaking Annihilus's blockade, leaving Franklin in Herbie's care. A new Fantastic Four, these four, invade Arthros just as Blastar's army does as well. A massive battle erupts as Annihilus unleashes the Annihilation Wave. The heroes free their captured allies, and Doom personally saves Reed, gloating as he does so. Though Reed and Sue are weakened, their powers do remain intact. As they attempt to retreat, Annihilus kills Blastar, and the Annihilation Wave overwhelms his forces. Reed insists that Annihilus must be stopped before he reaches Earth. Doom reluctantly agrees, directing America to open a portal to Latveria, and through that portal, unleashes an army of Doombots against the wave. Annihilus turns his attention to America Chavez, destroying Doom's enhancements before opening a rift to the positive zone to go after his true target, Franklin Richards. Trapped in the negative zone, the heroes can only worry as Annihilus reaches the Baxter Building. Herbie tries to stop him, but it's easily destroyed. Annihilus begins to siphon Franklin's energy until Franklin releases a devastating cosmic blast, seemingly annihilating Annihilus. But he definitely will return and will have a large role in the next saga, or at least that's the plan. The Annihilation Wave retreat, and with Annihilus gone, America Chavez is able to open a portal back to Earth 828. Johnny heavily flirts with Crystal, but as it turns out, that she's married to someone and that Luna is her daughter. In the comics, Luna is the daughter of Quicksilver, but that can't really be the case here because this is the Inhumans of the MCU, Earth 19999, and he's dead in the MCU. Doom, deeply intrigued by Franklin's unimaginable power, returns to Latveria to further investigate his visions, while America sends the Illuminati and the Inhumans back to their world. Weeks later, Sue reveals that she is pregnant, and Reed realizes that their child could have only been conceived during that night in the negative zone, and maybe she will be infused with negative zone energy. An end credit scene jumps 2 years later. Sue cradles her daughter Valeria and enters Franklin's room, where she finds Dr. Doom kneeling beside him, masked removed. Something has changed in Doom over these years, a mystery that will be revealed as Dr. Doom and the Fantastic Four will return in Avengers Doomsday. Another end credit scene cuts to the other side of the universe, where we are reintroduced to Shala Bal, surfing away from Galactus when all of a sudden a rift opens and she's unable to stop herself from flying through. The rift closes behind her as she is introduced to the Silver Surfer of another universe, Norrin Rad of Earth 19999. Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 2 releases between August and September and is created by the same people as the first season. Here we follow the Raimi-verse Spider-Man, his daughter, and his clone as they face off against the offspring of Venom as it attaches itself to a serial killer known as Cletus Cassidy, becoming Carnage. Peter takes over as the head of Horizon Labs after the death of Max Modell. The season ends with Carnage killing Scarlet Spider and the other two defeating him. MJ then gives birth to a son and they name him Benji Parker, after Ben Reilly and after Uncle Ben. An extended end credit scene shows an incursion destroying Earth 96283. Before it's destroyed, however, the Watcher appears, sending the Parker family elsewhere. After 4 years of build-up and near constant releases, the Midnight Sun saga concludes with Midnight Suns, but unlike the rest, which were special presentations or series, this is going to be a movie. That's right, 2027 is the first year in the MCU to have 4 movies, but this is also because the last 2 years will only have 2 movies each. Releasing in October, because of course it does, the movie is written collaboratively by the creative teams behind Man-Thing, Werewolf by Night, Blade, and Moon Knight, and directed by Jordan Peele. Midnight Suns will also be the second R-rated MCU movie after Deadpool and Wolverine. While Blade ended with the Midnight Suns assembling, this reveals the team's formation was deliberately orchestrated by Man-Thing, who was set down this path by the Living Tribunal. This is shown on screen. Following the events of the King Dynasty, Man-Thing is instructed by the Living Tribunal to find the werewolf. Their first meeting occurs, which we see, when Man-Thing saves Jack Russell from being killed by Moon Knight, specifically the Jake Lockley version, who then escapes. Meanwhile, Robbie Reyes, also known as Ghost Rider, makes his return to the MCU, being contacted by Zarathos, the spirit of vengeance and source of his abilities, who warns him of a powerful demon threatening Earth. Zarathos is revealed to be the son of Mephisto and Lilith, a demon long trapped in the Dark Dimension, with Dormammu being relatively recently destroyed, with these events taking place right after the King Dynasty. amnesty, Lilith escapes and seeks to reclaim the underworld from her ex-husband. Ghost Rider then arrives in Madripoor just as the Midnight Suns have united, which we saw in Blade. Lilith unleashes demons to possess those with supernatural powers, building an army. She takes control of Khonshu, turning Moon Knight against the team, but Moon Knight eventually breaks free when Jake relinquishes control and the other personas return. The Midnight Suns regroup and bond, traveling to Mephisto's realm to meet both him and Zarathos. As they travel Hell, Jack Russell and Elsa Bloodstone become a couple and the team generally bond. The story culminates in a final battle in Hell where Zarathos reveals he engineered the conflict to force his parents to kill each other so that he could rule Hell himself. When the Midnight Suns begin opposing him, he strips Robbie of his powers and then fights them. Zarathos is held off long enough for Robbie to merge with him and take control of his power, killing Zarathos and becoming the new Spirit of Vengeance. The Midnight Suns witness as Mephisto kills Lilith. However, he then is surrounded by the Midnight Suns and the new Spirit of Vengeance, and so he gives up his domain, fading elsewhere. As the Spirit of Vengeance, he's contacted by a being known as the One Below All, and he's forbidden from letting the Midnight Suns return to Earth. They're now trapped in Hell alongside him. An end credit scene takes place much later, showing Mephisto as he's approached by mysterious beings who rip him apart, killing him. So that's it for 2027, the first year with 4 movies and 2 animated series with no live action series. Let's move on to 2028, which is when we finally arrive at Avengers Doomsday. However, before that, 2028 begins with the single most delayed project in this saga. There might be an Eternals movie in the next saga, which would be more delayed, but in the Incursion saga, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is the most delayed. It took this long, 6.5 years. The reason is that in the real MCU, Shang-Chi did not appear at all in between his movie and Avengers Doomsday. I could have made changes like I did for others like the Fantastic Four, but I don't think a Shang-Chi trilogy would have made all that much sense, and I don't like the idea of a character getting a movie and then from then on out only appearing in team-up movies, never getting a sequel. And ultimately, as I was putting the saga together, I just kept pushing Shang-Chi back again and again until finally arriving here. Shang-Chi is introduced as a new powerful and important hero meant to be important to Avengers Doomsday. Shang-Chi releases in February and is written by the same people who wrote the first, but we're gonna have to change the director since he's busy with the Spider-Man movies. Instead, it'll be directed by the Daniels. Because it's 7 years later, Shang-Chi will be a good amount older and will therefore not be a valet, but rather working for a security company called Freelance Restorations, alongside Katie, who is also security, explaining how she has any ability to do that insane feat she did in the end. Aside from that, the movie is the same, except for the end credit scene, which is only really different in that instead of talking to Bruce Banner, Shang-Chi talks to Carol and Sam. He's also recruited to the Avengers, officially. Daredevil Born Again Season 3 releases between February and April and takes Daredevil back to basics, not trying to tell a story that spans seasons or leads up to a movie, but rather a complete story disconnected from anything else. New York City is back to normal, and Matt and Karen have now finally gotten together. Daredevil deals with a very personal threat that connects back to law school. A man named Larry Cranston, who went to law school with Matt and Foggy, he hated how Matt Murdock was constantly praised because he considered himself a better lawyer, and that Matt was only being praised because he's blind. Not too long ago, by pure chance, Larry somehow learned that Matt is Daredevil and assumed that he lied about being blind. Larry lost it, tracked down a criminal he once represented, someone named Zoltan Drago. Zoltan previously created a fear gas and used it as Mr. Fear against Daredevil at some point in between the 2 series. Larry blackmails Zoltan, who has at this point turned over a new leaf, into creating more fear gas. Larry becomes the new Mr. Fear and sets out to make Daredevil's life a living hell, putting Matt through the ringer and blackmailing him into revealing his identity to the public. Matt is disbarred and their law firm is shut down. Matt is put on trial while Mr. Fear lays low. Unfortunately for Larry, the trial does not go his way. Up until this point, we'd also follow a side story where Luke Cage runs for mayor against someone named Harris, and he wins, just in time for Matt's trial. The courts have a hard time finding an unbiased jury, and Luke, who has become mayor, allows the judge to dismiss the case. No one really goes against this, all thanks to Daredevil's extremely favorable view. He is acquitted, setting a Marvel Universe New York City pro-vigilantism precedent. From there, Daredevil goes after and takes down Mr. Fear. This this will be the final season of Daredevil Born Again, with both series coming to an end after 3 seasons. This series comes to an end on a finale note. Foggy, who at this point is married to Marcy Stahl and with a kid, learns he can still practice law in San Francisco, so he moves there. Matt, however, will never be able to leave New York. The season up until this point will have focused on how Matt likes cooking, paralleling Kingpin's cooking scenes from previous seasons, so Matt continues the Devil's work while switching careers to being a chef. Matt and Karen's relationship also develops further, and they get engaged. They will never break up after this. However, while this is the end of Daredevil having his own series, it's not the end of his appearances in the MCU. In fact, in an end credit scene, Matt is living his life happy when he starts hearing people screaming about a world in the sky. He doesn't really understand, he can sense chaos, but not what the audience then sees, as he can't really see the sky. Another Earth in the sky. The MCU is now ground zero for a full-on incursion, and the first time we see it is from the most street-level perspective. And of course, Daredevil will return in Avengers Doomsday. After Spider-Man No Way Home, fans were clamoring for a grounded, street-level Spider-Man story, and that's exactly what Marvel wanted to do, but Sony fought against them, and thus we got Brand New Day, which people hated. The next movie after that was more street-level, but also a big event team-up movie and finale to a saga. It's only now, as Sony begins relaxing their tight grip on the Spider-Man franchise, that Marvel finally gives everyone what they've always wanted: the first true solo Spider-Man movie in the MCU that's fully street-level. No Iron Man, no Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D., Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Hulk, or New Defenders. It's just Spider-Man in his darkest day. Spider-Man Darkest Day concludes the Day trilogy, which is also the Destin Daniel Cretton trilogy, with the writers also returning. As of the making of this movie, Tom Holland's future in the MCU beyond the saga was uncertain because his contract after the saga would be up. He might sign on to more, but they don't know if he will. So, during development, Darkest Day is written as a definitive finale, bringing Spider-Man's story full circle. The film opens in 2015 using advanced de-aging 2028 technology to follow a 14-year-old Peter Parker being driven to school by Uncle Ben. Elsewhere in New York, a privately funded scientific startup, Oscorp, conducts radical research under Norman Osborn. Focus shifts to lead scientist Otto Octavius, who reveals he suffers from a rare, incurable muscular dystrophy, obsessed with spiders his entire life. Otto believes their biology can cure him. With Oscorp's backing, he irradiates spiders and injects their blood into himself. However, these experiments fail catastrophically, infecting his mind and driving him unstable, while not giving him any of the abilities that he wanted. One spider escapes Oscorp, travels across the city, and bites Peter Parker at Midtown High before dying in Peter's hand. We transition from Peter's hand to a black hand with a white patch. Spider-Man, now wearing the black symbiote suit in the present day, swings through the city, thriving. He's faster, stronger, excelling in school, promoted at the Daily Bugle, and in a steady relationship with Black Cat. Though Peter knows the suit is alive and recalls warnings from Spider-Man 2 in No Way Home, he ignores them, allowing himself to believe that his life will go differently. And while a lot of things between the Spider-Men are similar, in this instance, he is technically right. The symbiote will not affect his personality this time because that's something we've seen enough times in my opinion. Instead of affecting his personality, it kind of goes against his wishes sometimes, like when it killed Kingpin, but at this point, he's mostly got it under control. Further abandoning any notion of trying to keep away from any element from the other Spider-Man's lives, he grows close to Harry Osborn, but not so much with Ned, since he kind of regretted telling MJ when he did, and after being rejected by her, he refused to tell Ned everything, and so they're kind of weird around each other. It's while talking to Harry that Peter learns that Paul is planning to propose to MJ, which devastates him, hinting his love for her does remain unresolved, despite the fact that he's with Black Cat. At Oscorp, Otto, now paralyzed from the neck down, operates using spider-like mechanical legs, even if everyone calls him Dr. Octopus. Again, he's always been obsessed with spiders. He gave himself 4 extra limbs to have 8 so that he'd be a spider, but everyone calls him Dr. Octopus because his name is Otto Octavius. He has secretly monitored Spider-Man for years. Oscorp previously acquired the symbiote, which Otto used to create Mr. Negative. When Spider-Man appears with the symbiote, Otto cannot believe it. His 2 biggest experiments, the symbiote and the escaped spider, which he presumes is how Spider-Man got his powers, went to the same person. He is convinced that fate has intertwined their lives, and that Spider-Man is deliberately ruining him. For a full year, Otto prepares Spider-Man's darkest day. That day arrives arrives as a couple of weeks after there was a breakout at the Damage Control Supermax prison. Peter swings out to meet Felicia and is ambushed by Kraven the Hunter, followed by Scorpion, Chameleon disguised as an older Spider-Man, Prowler, and the now very long absent Shocker. Despite the symbiote's power, Peter is overwhelmed. Shocker's sonic attacks destabilize the suit. A mechanical arm then strikes Peter, and through blurred vision, Peter utters, "Dr. Octavius?" confirming Otto's belief that they are destined enemies, even if from Peter's perspective, they've never met. He just knows him as his alternate universe counterpart. The Sinister Six is born, Spider-Man is captured and taken to their base as Black Cat, angered by Peter's absence, leaves, maybe even heartbroken. Otto forbids unmasking Spider-Man and places both of them into a machine. As Paul proposes to MJ, Otto swaps their minds. Otto awakens in Peter's powerful body, finally with the abilities of a spider. He has, in his perspective, accomplished his lifelong dream of becoming Spider-Man even before Spider-Man even debuted. Peter, on the other hand, wakes trapped in Otto's dying body. Otto shuts off life support and Peter dies, as MJ rejects Paul and ends their relationship. See, in this version, and this was always the plan, Paul is just a guy who MJ rebounded to but never truly loved. Peter is her true love, and unlike the comics, well, let's just say, live-action superheroes tend to have actual endings, they're not endless. Otto immediately masters the symbiote, redesigns the suit, and declares himself the superior Spider-Man. He immediately turns on the villains, trying to fulfill Spider-Man's goal. However, he does it in what he considers to be a superior way, brutally killing the Shocker and Scorpion while the rest manage to escape. This isn't the actual Sinister Six, or rather that's not the point of this movie. They might get to another Sinister Six down the line, but for now the point of the Sinister Six was simply to get Spider-Man into this place. Over the next year, Otto hunts criminals mercilessly, killing villains like Boomerang, Tarantula, and Vermin. He pushes MJ and Felicia away because of a lack of interest in women in general, mistreats Harry, graduates college, and launches Parker Industries. It appears he's won, and is winning for a very long time. But Peter's subconscious still exists within Otto's mind, and it grows stronger, manifesting through visions of Uncle Ben, who forces Peter to confront his guilt and pain. It's here that we see more of Peter's original origin story and Uncle Ben's death, and then a montage shows him being snapped, Aunt May's death, being forgotten by the world, rejected by MJ, and finally murdered. Ben, who is his own subconscious, reminds him of all the lives he saved, the world, the people of New York, the friendly neighborhood, and the love that he still holds, the people who love him, the people that surround him. And ultimately, Ben reminds him of his great power and great responsibility. Dr. Octopus does not understand responsibility, so he doesn't deserve that power. Meanwhile, a personification of the symbiote acts as the devil on Peter's shoulder, telling him to stay down. Ultimately, Uncle Ben wins. Reignited, Peter fights back. Otto begins to lose control while swinging. Black Cat follows him to get answers, while Peter forces them to a church, where, as Black Cat watches, Peter rings the bell to tear off the symbiote. Not just symbolic of him getting rid of Otto, Otto's consciousness actually remains in the symbiote. So as Peter regains control, the symbiote escapes. He explains everything to Felicia, who then kisses him in relief, and both of them in that moment realize that their love is real. He returns to his life, discovering Parker Industries, an unintended good that Otto left behind. But for the most part, Otto did make a mess of his personal life while also taking away a year from his life. So this is the second time in his life that he's lost time, and the second time that his personal life has been messed up by some sort of event. The symbiote finds Otto's grave and revives him. A new black suit Spider-Man breaks out of the grave before swinging away and arriving at a place where Otto stashed away hidden tech as a backup plan. We learn here that the spider blood that resides in Otto's body from all the transfusions earlier in his life are activated by the symbiote. So with the symbiote, he's as powerful as Spider-Man is with it, but also stashed away here are more mechanical arms. With the mechanical arms, the symbiote, and the blood flowing through his veins, a superior Venom is born. Otto's shattered mind forgets Peter entirely and fixates on Spider-Man. Venom begins randomly attacking people at Central Park, drawing Spider-Man, now in a new suit, and Black Cat into battle. Kraven, Chameleon, and the Prowler all show up to help, mostly out of revenge. Peter reveals that he created an anti-symbiote sonic weapon, but Venom gains the upper hand thanks to his mechanical arms, and in a moment of pure rage, stabs and kills Felicia. This is Peter's actual Gwen Stacy moment. A woman that he actually genuinely loved is killed by a main villain. However, she is a cat, she should have 9 lives. I'm sure she'll eventually return. This just signifies that she's not Peter's endgame. Consumed by rage, Spider-Man mercilessly beats Venom, ripping off anything that gives Otto his power, ripping off the symbiote and putting it into a container, and ripping off his mechanical arms, leaving him broken as Kraven, Chameleon, and the Prowler all escape. Peter mourns Felicia at her funeral. Unable to move on, back home, he collapses until MJ knocks. She refuses to leave, confronting her friend as he cries. Comic readers will recognize that moment as being from the night Gwen Stacy died and being the catalyst for the Spider-Man and MJ relationship. The film ends with Harry Osborn visiting his comatose father while Oscorp sends him off to some sort of operation, something highly experimental, setting the stage for what comes next if the world survives long enough. An end credit scene jumps an unidentified amount of time into the future, showing a scene from Avengers Doomsday. Peter and MJ are together, but he's swept away to action when New York becomes ground zero for another Earth coming crashing in. As he swings away, they tell each other that they love each other. Spider-Man will return in Avengers Doomsday. What if Season 2 releases between August and September and continues exploring the Marvel Multiverse in another 10 episodes? Episode 1, what if Nebula joined the Nova Corps? Episode 2, what if Iron Man never mentored Spider-Man? An episode version of the real world Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, where he's recruited by Norman and becomes the Oscorp-sponsored Spider-Man. Episode 3, what if Black Panther traveled to the past, replacing Eyes of Wakanda, and showcases the Queen Black Panther of the 24th century, returning to 1896 during the first Italo-Ethiopian War to stop a vibranium axe from being retrieved. She fails, and the world is then overrun by vibranium tech. Episode 4, what if Thor was a frog, which is just simply an animal world. Episode 5, what if Peter Quill was brought to Ego, which is unchanged. Episode 6, what if Zombies Returned, which tells the present-day story of Marvel Zombies, focusing on Kamala Khan. Episode 7, what if the Amazing Spider-Man traveled the Spider-Verse, which is an honest-to-goodness triple crossover between the MCU and both Amazing Spider-Man and Spider-Verse movies. Peter leads a ragtag group of spiders to take down Morlun, a spider totem vampire traveling the multiverse killing Spider-Man. This episode ends on a cliffhanger. Episode 8, what if Bucky became Captain America? In this world, Sam Wilson was killed by Thanos, and so Bucky reluctantly became Captain America. Because of this, World War Hulk went very differently, becoming a legitimate apocalypse. However, in the end, they do manage to destroy the Hulk. Finally, the two-part finale, episode 9 and 10, are What If the Other Half Was Snapped, parts 1 and 2. In this version of Endgame, the heroes kill Thanos but never invent time travel. Instead, they help put the pieces back together and humanity goes on, but it'll never go back to the way it was. There will be a third season that takes place before Avengers Doomsday and directly helps set up Secret Wars. And finally, we've arrived, the entire basis for this whole series, Avengers Doomsday. Now, as of right now, I don't actually know what Doomsday will be about. I know it'll involve the Avengers, the New Avengers, the Fox X-Men, the Fantastic Four, Steve Rogers returning, Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom for whatever reason, and leading into Secret Wars. So using that information in tandem with what my version of the MCU looked like up until this point, Marvel Studios presents Avengers Doomsday. Releasing in December, it was set up until this point, and will be even larger than the real-world movie, because the Incursion saga was larger than the Multiverse saga. Written by Michael Waldron and Stephen McFeely, and directed by the Russo brothers, Doomsday includes many different factions. It's a huge movie, but the main character, like Infinity War with Thanos, is Dr. Doom. The first act is structured in a way, while we are introduced to each faction and where they are now, we also revolve around a single conversation. Before we arrive at that conversation, however, we see the multiverse as endless incursions occur, and then we cut to Earth 1999 in 1950. We meet Steve Rogers as he comes home to his wife Peggy and his son Ian. Steve's unique time travel adventure with the Time Stone did not branch into another timeline. Steve was around throughout the entirety of the MCU's history as Peggy's husband. Steve is then approached by the Beyonder. However, as the Beyonder begins to speak, we transition over to Dr. Doom, also speaking to the Beyonder. 2 years ago, right after Doom and the Fantastic Four teamed up against Annihilus, Doom was soon approached by the Beyonder, who explained to him his visions from that movie and his future. Throughout the movie, we jump back to this conversation as the action is broken up by Quiet, and we and Doom learn about the multiverse. We learn right away that the multiverse is destined to be soon destroyed by the Beyonders, an all-powerful race who want to create a new cosmos directed by and for them. The Beyonder goes against his race, wanting to prevent this because, as he says, he's a big fan of this cosmos. He's an actual fanboy. To avoid confusion with the Beyonders, from now on I'll be calling the Beyonder by his given name, Cosmos with a K, otherwise there might be some confusion. Oh, also sometimes he likes to fan cast himself into roles. He was the Wolverine that we saw in Deadpool and Wolverine, as he's played by Henry Cavill. Cutting to the present day, Dr. Doom in the Baxter Building reveals that his face has been healed. How, we don't know yet, but for some reason, to the audience he looks like Tony Stark. Doom approaches Franklin Richards before Sue walks in. Doom tells Sue that their world is going to die, but Franklin can help save the multiverse. Doom points to the sky, saying that it has begun, and soon, the sky rips apart and out of the breach comes an Earth. Cosmos explains to Doom that the Beyonders became sick of this current cosmos and any lower being existing, so decided to destroy everything. Millennia ago, they went to each one of the universes in the multiverse and planted a bit of themselves into someone in each universe, so that, generations from now, someone would be born as a living bomb with their power, which usually turned out to be someone named Owen Reese, with the idea that when the time came, they'd explode and kill everything. However, a few different factions became aware of the Molecule Men, one of them was the TVA, and many of them disappeared. So they pivoted to setting off a chain reaction of incursions that would destroy existence. A messier but more inevitable death. Cosmos' words are continued by Doom in the present day, explaining to the Fantastic Four, once the Earths collide, it's all over, and their world is doomed. But the multiverse is not necessarily. They need to save themselves. The other side of the incursion is that of the Captain Carter world from What If Episode 1. Over the course of the next 24 hours, the Fantastic Four and Doom work together to build a life raft that they can use to escape through the negative zone towards Earth 19999. There was nothing they could do. Earth 828 and the Captain Carter world both are eradicated. In Earth 1999, the Avengers, now joined by Hercules, hold a meeting on Avengers Island, as they then get a visual of a spaceship entering their atmosphere. The new Avengers get the same visual from Avengers Tower, and Carol and Monica fly up to meet them. However, President James Ritson has a strict no alien policy, though he gives a quick go-ahead to attack this UFO. This is a life raft without weaponry, so it's destroyed and the heroes fall to Earth. Sue saves herself and her kids with her powers, and everyone else is generally durable enough, and are saved by the Avengers and brought to Avengers Island. However, in the chaos, Doom mysteriously disappears. The new Avengers want to get involved, so they head to Avengers Island as well, as Avengers Island is not exactly a well-kept secret. Meanwhile, we go to the end of time and follow Wiccan, Quicksilver, and Hulkling separated from the other Young Avengers. This comes right after the ending of Young Avengers, where Wiccan got a sense that his mother is alive. Turns out she's not. This was a trap, and they are all hooked up to machines that begin draining their power. Back on Earth, the Fantastic Four warn the Avengers about the coming incursion, and call for the help of the Illuminati. The Avengers do not recognize this name, but when they list the members, the Avengers say that they all went missing years ago. However, there is a Black Panther. In Wakanda, Shuri leaves her castle having been told about this by the Avengers. She calls their allies King Atuma of the Talokans and Sorcerer Supreme Wong. Their missing leaders might have just been found. Cut to a different dimension at the end of time, and we meet Loki, joined by the Illuminati. It turns out, the Illuminati never returned to their Earth. Instead, they were intercepted by Loki and King Thor, recruiting them for a different mission. We see Yggdrasil as branches grow over each other and fall, as Loki reveals that since he took this seat, he's been dealing with a mysterious figure known as Raboom Alal, seemingly causing incursions throughout the multiverse. Loki sent the TVA to try and deal with this, but feels as if Raboom Alal will now come for him next. The Illuminati are meant to protect Loki from him. Cut back to Steve as Cosmos reveals to him that he is Earth's greatest leader, and so he is needed to save the world. Steve reluctantly agrees to leave his family behind to save existence. Steve suits up and calls for Mjolnir, shocking a younger Thor, and goes on a cosmic adventure. We return to our Earth as the Avengers have been brought up to speed. Just then, the sky opens up and an incursion begins. This time, it's different. They can't exactly stop this one. As if it's because of the incursions, Shang-Chi's rings immediately act up. They light up with a map that leads them to the location from where the beacon came from. Reed comes up with a plan to push back the Earth, and members of each team that are not necessary to these plans or the structures of the team during these plans go off to find that beacon. After they leave, the Illuminati adjacent characters appear. Matt Murdock reacts to the incursion in a very unique way, but eventually comes to his senses and goes off to help who he can. Peter Parker sees the Earth in the sky from his apartment. He suits up, kisses MJ goodbye, the two tell each other "I love you," and Spider-Man swings off. Returning to the conversation, the Beyonder reveals that he has approached whoever seemed like the most qualified leader in a handful of worlds, his favorites. This one, however, is special. We witness as Doom, unlike Cyclops or Steve Rogers, manages to convince the Beyonder to give him a bit of his power. Doom promises that with this power, he'll save the multiverse and return with more. Doom uses knowledge of the multiverse, and in countless worlds, a version of Dr. Doom was the one man responsible for saving the world. Cosmos agrees. Doom is given a fraction of his power, and the first thing he does is heal his face. Doom sets his sights on Earth 1999 after Doom walks through a portal. On the other side of this incursion is Earth 10005, and as it turns out, they were not exactly caught off guard. Cyclops was approached by Cosmos and told that the only way to stop the incursion would be to defeat the heroes of the other world. Cosmos just loves it when heroes fight each other. The X-Men prepared for this moment, rallying together with the Brotherhood of Mutants that kind of adopt Magneto's ideology of "we gotta eradicate them to save ourselves." Arriving on the other side, the X-Men battle the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, who are forced to change their goal while Cosmos watches in delight, even getting a little bit excited when Daredevil and Spider-Man show up. At the same time, Deadpool, seeing the writing on the wall, literally not with the X-Men, calls in the TVA. He's saved by the Young Avengers, and both he and the audience learn of how many worlds are left, only a few hundred. We even see a few more incursions, including those from What If and a few old Marvel movies. Arriving at the end of time, Dr. Doom is surprised to find the Young Avengers there. He laid traps for anybody who would come, but wasn't responsible for luring them there. However, he takes the opportunity to drain their powers. Doom ascends towards Loki and a grand battle begins. Doom takes on the Illuminati by himself in an epic battle. A big focus of the battle is how taken aback everyone is that this Raboom Alal, who the Illuminati do recognize as Dr. Doom, looks like Tony Stark. Thor tries to protect an alternate version of his dead brother from an alternate version of his dead friend. We follow the past Dr. Doom as he uses his Beyonder power to return 10,000 years into the past. He accesses the nexus of all realities and finds a place in this dimension called the Library of Worlds, where he becomes a god to its people known as Raboom Alal, which in their language means the Great Destroyer, starting a religion out of powerful interdimensional beings known as the Black Swans, with the task of scouring the multiverse for any and all molecule men to round them up. Doom then creates a key to this library, the 10 Rings, and sends them out to Earth 19999 to be found by early civilizations. Steve Rogers tracks down the Living Tribunal, who points him towards the Builders, who are revealed to be the beings who created the multiverse and essentially the opposites of the Beyonders, working directly for someone they call the One Above All, also revealing that the Beyonders work for the One Below All, essentially God and Satan. After being informed of the situation, they grant Steve a portion of their power, the Enigma Force. Steve goes a bit further than America. Steve Rogers is now Captain Universe. Magneto does what he always does and takes things to the extreme one final time. Forcing a merge with Professor X, he deliberately creates Onslaught again to begin destroying Earth, as Magneto believes that if Earth 1999 is destroyed, his world will survive. The Marvels are separated, so the binary form is not available. The other Avengers track down the beacon, bringing them to a doorway to the Library of Worlds. The rings unlock it, and out come an army of Black Swans. The Black Swans head right for the incursion point, and the Avengers follow. However, they're unable to keep up, and they're unable to stop them as they witness as this group of interdimensional beings crash into Earth 10005 and destroy it, creating an explosion that destroys most of them. They were essentially a final safeguard protecting Doom's chosen world from incursions that might occur. The X-Men collapse in despair as their world is destroyed. Onslaught, however, continues his campaign until he's attacked by the remaining Black Swan. The rest of the heroes must work together against him. As Doom battles the Illuminati, Steve Rogers appears before the heroes of Earth, destroying Onslaught and recruiting them for one final battle. Doom manages to finally finally get to Loki. He kills him and absorbs his power, stealing his place on the multiversal throne. Doom takes a hold of Yggdrasil as the branches begin falling off. One by one, the universes die until there are only a few timelines left. Throughout the entirety of the multiverse, this was the only incursion that was prevented, and so Earth 1999 will be the final world. Doom takes his seat as the savior of existence and quickly changes it, surrounded by his castle and the surrounding area. In comes Cosmos. Cosmos congratulates him and tries to take his power back, but Doom refuses. Doom tells Cosmos that he was right. Only he can save the multiverse. With the incursions coming to an end, the Beyonders are coming for Earth. With the combined power of what he was given by Cosmos, the power he stole from Loki, and what he drained from the Young Avengers, Doom blasts Cosmos with a blast powerful enough to destroy him. Doom receives the rest of his power. But then Captain Universe arrives with an army of heroes. Doom smiles, saying, "Good, you're all here." The heroes are joined by an army of TVA agents that include the Young Avengers and Deadpool. Off-screen, Spider-Man and Daredevil were joined by the New Defenders. The Illuminati regroup and join, loved ones reunite, old friends see each other again, and finally, the Sentry awakens. And the entirety of the Marvel Universe, save for a few factions, come together for an Endgame-style final battle, way bigger than Endgame ever was, but this will not go like it did in Endgame. Doom tries to go about this diplomatically, saying that he saved what he could, but the Beyonders are coming. This is their final chance, and only one man can stop them. He believes it's him. Reed says not to trust him. Doom calls in an army of Doombots, each one as powerful as Ultron, and then what's remaining of the Black Swan, capable of destroying a planet, and takes the 10 rings for himself as war breaks out. The more powerful heroes like Captain Universe, the Sentry, and King Thor take on Doom, while everyone else fights the rest. A few characters of lesser note are killed, but Doom gets a sense that time is running out, and so he gets away from Steve, Thor, and Sentry just long enough to kill someone who has frustratingly survived, Yelena Belova, doing so for the express purpose of unleashing the Void. And this is exactly what happens. The Void is unleashed, enveloping everything. Doom walks right past all the worst moments in his life, the first of which shows his birth and his mother telling his father that she's changed her mind. She wants to keep him. Finally, after walking past everything else, he locates Bob. The other New Avengers already arrived, and they try to stop him, but Doom slaughters all of them. Doom picks up Bob, plunges his arm into his chest, and kills him, taking the power of the Sentry and the Void in for himself. Doom frees Steve Rogers from the Void, but Steve can do nothing as Doom saps his powers from him. Finally, Doom looks to Franklin Richards. Doom walks up to the now 6-year-old and says he's sorry, but as he sees his face, he's reminded of the 6-year-old Reed, who he sees as his absolute worst enemy and the bane of his existence. A huge smirk develops on Doom's face, and he unleashes Reed from the Void, allowing him to watch as he absorbs Franklin's cosmic energy into himself. As everyone else is surrounded by the Void, he's then approached by the Beyonders. The Beyonders reveal that they killed Eternity, the Living Tribunal, and any other cosmic entity who opposed them. They even capture Death and will destroy her once this is all over. Doom, nevertheless, stands before them with conviction, convincing them to allow him to see Earth once more. They oblige out of respect for their powerful foe. This, however, was a trick. Doom looks at the Beyonders and says, "Welcome to Latveria," as the Earth explodes and Doom teleports back to his castle. It turns out the Black Swan rounded up thousands of Molecule Men from across the multiverse and placed them at Earth 1999. This Molecule Man explosion kills the Beyonders, but destroys Earth. Earth being destroyed begins killing the final universe, but Doom uses his power to bring it back together, stitching pieces of land imperfectly and replacing what was completely destroyed, either now or by Onslaught, with the setting of the final battle and planets from across the universe until Earth is whole again, but different. However, he did this just in time before the universe was completely destroyed, meaning only this world is left. There's literally nothing else in all of existence, not even the rest of the universe. Returning to his castle, Doom passes by the Void, stands before his throne, and lets out a blast of energy that covers the Earth. He's now alone in his castle as he scattered everyone else across Latveria. He takes his seat on the throne with nothing and no one left to threaten all of existence, and Doom as the rightful supreme leader of everything. He is God. He is Emperor Doom. He is Radum Alal, the great savior. But next to Doom at all times is an irregular shadow, a small pocket of the Void that the camera focuses focuses on, and we begin hearing screaming. In this pocket of the void lies one man, Reed Richards. Dr. Doom will return in Avengers Secret Wars. But okay, why does Doom look like Tony Stark? Why did he choose Earth 1999 and not his own world? Where were the Midnight Suns? How could they possibly come back from all of this? Well, that will be explained in Secret Wars, the second movie in an epic end of saga trilogy, all filmed back to back, releasing annually, wrapping everything up. That and the surrounding projects releasing in 2029 and 2030 is what I'll be exploring in the fourth and final part, because this video, as you could see, ended up being far too long for me to cover the rest. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching.